This PowerPoint will just run through basics of what Python is and why you might want to be studying it. Python is what's called a high-level programming language. Basically, this means it can be readable and understandable by people when they see the code. At some point, those instructions, that code needs to be translated to ones and zeros so that it can be understood by computer hardware. Uh, but at the level that it's written, Python should be intelligible to people who have spent at least a little bit of time studying it. Python is freely available, so it's kind of an open source, easily accessible way to give instructions to computers. Um, the mysterious name here, Python, it was given to this kind of set of protocols, this syntax, by its designer, Guido van Rossum. He was a fan of Monty Python's Flying Circus, so I kind of picked that cool sounding name for the language. Why pick Python? It's easy to learn. This is maybe it's a relative term, but as a high level programming language, it's something that you can you won't want to do it too much, but you can just type out line by line. I think during as you learn it, that's going to be very helpful this semester. But even kind of going forward to where you're working with blocks of pre-written code, it's easy to understand. It can work, for beginners, can work for experts, can be work on small projects. It's low barrier to entry enough to make it worthwhile, but also large projects, and it can work across operating systems. Also, just something of note here, it's kind of decentralized, and they understand these people who develop Python that the people who use it will use it for very different applications, and they may want to kind of base certain operations on one version of Python without updating it quite as frequently as is possible anyway. So if we go to the kind of the Python downloads website, you can see some Python versions are maintained. 3.8 is the newest. 3.7, 6, 5, even 2.7 is still maintained because of some older applications, for instance, ArcGIS for desktop, that still rely on Python version 2.7. So it's kind of decentralized compared to centralized development. It's a different option. It's something you might find easier to work with, or something maybe could be more difficult. And if this being in contrast to a lot of the commercial software that's put out, where they work on a lot of different features for a new updated version, and then when it comes out, they kind of introduce those all at once according to their vision. Some of these decentralized platforms come out step by step. So there's a 3.7, 3.678 separated by possibly even months, kind of taking for granted people are going to be using that for maybe many different applications. Some benefits of knowing Python, so it can be useful for any kind of academic professional career you have going forward. Um, kind of complementary tool for other programming languages. Some of these would be maybe not termed high-level program languages, kind of closer to the protocols that the computer understands. JavaScript's another high level. Um, one kind of specific reason why we're taking this course or why this course is part of a GIS program is because a lot of the GIS software applications have implemented Python as a way to automate tasks, to script tasks within those applications. So these might have to do with data management organization, kind of specifically Esri products. Some library we'll learn about later. It's called ArcPy, but also other GIS applications. So this open source QGIS. It's kind of Python utility is recognized for a lot of different things outside of just spatial analysis. So you can kind of scour the job ads for some sort of kind of relevant to some extent to computer science or programming. And you'd see kind of Python knowledge. This could be data science, statistics, even web services. Specific advice for this course, I'm repeating a little bit of this from the syllabus video. You might find this to be hard work. Some people, they get it very easily. They just have, I don't know, the mind of the programmer. That's not necessarily me. I've been doing this for a little while, mainly to make the rest of my life a little bit easier or reproducible. And it's you can really struggle with things. Sometimes it's not even um, what you think would be the most complicated thing, but sometimes because of that struggle, I think it can be more fun than some of the other work. You can have breakthroughs that you never would have thought were meaningful, but they become meaningful to you. Um, as for assignments, kind of the guidelines I say here, 2 to 4 hours. Here, these are the weekly assignments that I'll post on Wednesdays. If they take you 5 hours, don't worry about it. That's not a big problem. If it's taking you 10 hours, then talk to me and we'll figure out why it's taking so long and how to make it be doable in a more reasonable time frame for you. Ask me for help when you need it, but also don't be scared of struggling with something for a little bit. Kind of, you'll figure out how much time you it's going to be a productive struggle because some of them you will get through, and your hard work will pay off. And it's just kind of a quick rundown of things we don't cover. You know, Python is a really broadly useful language, so it's just not going to be possible to cover everything. We do a good job of covering basics and then specialized applications within GIS in this course, but there are some other things we don't cover. So graphical user interface issues, also things like web, database, or internet applications, which might be of interest to you and maybe would be worked into future courses. So just a little bit of vocabulary. Python is the package for the program language, and an integrated development environment, IDE, or I might just call this the development environment, is an application that allows you to enter code to be processed and to write scripts. So we're going to begin using a development environment called idle, which is an upfront, simple development environment. We'll check out some other development environments. PyCharm is a common one. Microsoft's VS Code is another. These could contain useful tools like autocomplete, error checking, advanced visual themes. They just look cooler, but it's going to be helpful to make some errors as we start out, and to not have our code auto-completed because we don't know if the suggestion is really what we want. Know that there are also some good browser-based interpreters. You might see here IPython or Jupyter. So here, if you check out AUM's virtual desktop and you go click the kind of start menu here and start typing out idle, IDLE, you should get two options popping up. Python 2.7, idle Python GUI, that's the graphical user interface, or Python 3.4. This, I should mention, I've logged into the AUM Esri ArcGIS virtual desktop. And the reason why there are two different idles installed is because ArcGIS for desktop runs on 2.7, and the newer Arc Pro would run on 3.4. In this course, we're going to base our learning around Python 3, but it's important to know the differences, some of which are larger, some of which are pretty inconsequential. So you can click on one of those apps to open up idle. And in the first line of that shell, or I guess in the header of the line, you should be able to tell which version of Python that session is working in. Here, 2.7.6. You see these kind of, what is that, the greater than symbols pointing to a cursor? That is the space where you can type code, hit enter, and have it be executed. So in that console you just opened up, go ahead and type the following, hit enter. So if you open Python 2, type print, space, and then in quotation marks, hello world. And that's kind of a convention for a first program. Say the line hello world. Now if you had opened up Python, type the same function, print, but you need to add parentheses. So an open parenthesis, and then within quotes, your hello world, and then close parenthesis, hit enter. And there you go, one line program, just executed it. So we're going to get into what happened, some of the kind of tokens here, some of the variables and data types in the next week or two. This last slide here, if you're not working on the AUM virtual desktops, here's just a link, kind of steps, distinctions to be aware of to download Python on your home machine.